Have you ever wondered what secrets your chemistry teacher might be hiding? An innocent question, one might think, but in the case of our tale, it holds a disturbing truth. Meet Mr. Anderson, a seemingly ordinary high school chemistry teacher. He's got the stereotypical lab coat, the thick-rimmed glasses, the slightly unkempt hair. But there's a darkness that lurks beneath his scholarly exterior. A darkness born from a troubled past that has left him forever scarred. Mr. Anderson was never the popular kid in school. Instead, he was the favorite target of bullies, taunted and ridiculed for his love of science and his less-than-athletic physique. But he was also the kind of person who never forgets or forgives. Fast forward to the present, where Mr. Anderson has turned his love for chemistry into a weapon of revenge. He's been living a double life, teaching the periodic table by day and disfiguring teenagers by night. Not just any teenagers, mind you, but those who remind him of his childhood tormentors. There's Brad, the school's star quarterback, who now hides his face, scarred beyond recognition. Then there's Lisa, the cheerleader who once had boys lining up for her attention, now shunned for her disfigurement. And let's not forget Mike, the class clown who used to laugh at others, now the subject of their ridicule. But what drives a man to such extremes? What makes him see his students not as young minds to be molded, but as reminders of his own tortured past? A pattern emerges, a chillingly precise selection of victims, a cruel and twisted retribution for past wrongs. Yet, it's not the physical scars that are the most disturbing, but the psychological damage inflicted on these young lives. But who would suspect a teacher of such horrors? After all, they're here to guide us, not harm us. In the world of chemistry, reactions can be explosive, especially when fueled by the fires of revenge. Our tale pivots on a high school chemistry teacher. He's not your average educator, but rather a man scarred by the torments of his past. As a child, he was the target of relentless bullying. The bullies of his youth have left indelible marks, not just on his psyche, but on his very soul. It's these scars that have turned this man of science into a harbinger of horror. Over the years, he's perfected a cruel and unusual form of retribution. He uses his vast knowledge of chemistry to disfigure any student who bears even a slight resemblance to his childhood tormentors. It's a twisted form of poetic justice, a way for him to rewrite the wrongs of his past. And his weapon of choice? The corrosive power of acid, a substance as destructive and relentless as the bullies of his youth. But the plot thickens. A new student enrolls in his school, a boy with a familiar face. This face, however, doesn't just remind the teacher of his tormentors. It's a mirror image of his archenemy, the ringleader of the bullies that made his childhood a living nightmare. The son of his nemesis has walked into his classroom, into his world. A world where the laws of chemistry rule and revenge is a reaction waiting to happen. Our teacher sees this as more than just a coincidence. It's fate presenting him with an opportunity for his ultimate revenge. He's no longer just the bullied child. He's the master of his own destiny, a chemist with the power to rewrite his history. The son of his archenemy has presented him with a chance to finally tip the scales, to turn his past torment into a corrosive future for the one who represents all his pain. Revenge, they say, is a dish best served cold. But in our teacher's case, it comes with a side of corrosive acid. Every experiment has a hypothesis, and for our teacher, it was a horrific one. His past was a catalyst, driving him to commit monstrous acts against those who bore the slightest resemblance to his childhood tormentors. But this time, it was different. This time, his target was not just any student, but the son of his childhood nemesis. His plan was as meticulous as it was malevolent. He carefully studied the boy, noting his habits, his mannerisms, the times he was alone, vulnerable. The teacher's mind was a whirlwind of chemical equations and sinister plots, each detail meticulously planned and calculated. His revenge was not to be a simple act of disfiguration. No, it was to be an artistic masterpiece of chemical reactions, a symphony of pain and suffering played out on the canvas of the boy's face. He was not just a teacher anymore. He was an artist, a puppet master pulling the strings of fate, a scientist on the verge of his greatest experiment. The thrill of it all was intoxicating, sending shivers of anticipation down his spine. Each day brought him closer to the fruition of his plan, his heart pounding in his chest like a drum echoing the rhythm of his impending success. He was no monster in his eyes. He was an avenger, a deliverer of justice, a righter of wrongs. He was a man wronged in his youth, now taking control of his destiny. The boy, the son of his nemesis, was merely an instrument in his grand orchestra of revenge. He was the catalyst in his chemical reaction of pain and retribution. His experiment was ready to commence. He had all the elements in place: the subject, the method, the opportunity. His heart raced with adrenaline as he prepared to unleash his chemical concoction, to etch his vengeance into the flesh of his unsuspecting victim. In his twisted mind, the perfect reaction was about to take place. His experiment, his masterpiece of revenge, was about to unfold, and he, the misunderstood artist, the victim turned avenger, was ready to witness the horror of his own creation. But in chemistry, as in life, not all reactions go as planned. In the realm of the unexpected, the son of the teacher's nemesis, a seemingly ordinary teenager, had been harboring a secret of his own. He was not just another face in the crowd. He was a vessel of retribution, a mirror reflecting the teacher's past, a catalyst for an unexpected reaction. This young man had been carrying the legacy of his father, the archenemy of the chemistry teacher. He was aware of the teacher's dark past, his sinister actions, and his twisted experiments. The scars of the past were etched in his heart, fueling his determination to stop this cycle of vengeance. Unbeknownst to the teacher, the son had been studying him, piecing together the puzzle of his horrific deeds, just like the intricate chemical equations he solved in class. The teacher, lost in his thirst for revenge, had failed to notice the quiet resolve of this young man. When the moment came, the son didn't cower, didn't run. He stood his ground, eyes burning with resolve. He spoke out, revealing his knowledge of the teacher's past, his monstrous acts. A wave of shock washed over the teacher, his carefully laid plans crumbling to dust. The son's voice echoed through the room, carrying the weight of truth. He spoke of justice, of ending this reign of fear. His words were not just a revelation, they were a challenge to the teacher, a call to an endgame. The teacher had been playing the role of the predator, disfiguring innocent lives that reminded him of his bullies. But now, the tables had turned. The predator was now the prey, cornered by the truth, by the son of his childhood nemesis. In the face of this unexpected reaction, the teacher was left reeling. He had been caught in his own web of revenge. His past had caught up with him, and the son stood, ready to deliver justice. The predator had become the prey, and the final reaction was about to commence. The best laid plans often go awry, especially when they're as volatile as a chemical reaction. And so it was, as our chemistry teacher found himself face to face with the son of his childhood nemesis. The final confrontation was far from what he had meticulously planned. The teacher, who had spent his life manipulating elements, found himself in the grip of a reaction he couldn't control. The room was thick with tension, like a vial on the brink of explosion. The teacher, always the puppet master, now found himself the puppet. The son, who was supposed to be the victim of his revenge, had somehow turned the tables. He had outwitted the teacher, using his own twisted game against him. The teacher's shock was palpable, like a scientist who had just witnessed an unexpected result in his carefully controlled experiment. His downfall was as swift as it was unexpected. His actions, once veiled in secrecy, were now exposed. His gruesome experiments, his disfigured victims, his dark obsession with revenge, all laid bare for the world to see. The very students he had tormented rose against him, their collective strength overpowering his reign of terror. The consequences he faced were severe. The school he had once ruled with an iron fist turned its back on him. His reputation, once held high as a respected educator, crumbled like a house of cards. The law, too, was swift in its judgment. The teacher, who had spent his life hiding behind his knowledge, was stripped of his power and left to face the harsh reality of his actions. His plans, as meticulously calculated as a chemical formula, had blown up in his face. His past, the one he had tried so hard to erase, had come back to haunt him. But perhaps the most chilling revelation was that the son, the supposed victim, had become his undoing. In the end, even the most dangerous reactions have an antidote. And for our chemistry teacher, it was the very past he tried to erase. Y'all, we're wrapping up here, but don't you go anywhere just yet. show some love, hit that like button. Fancy more content like this? Go on, subscribe and let that bell icon ring so you won't miss a beat. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, sharing is caring. Until next time, stay tuned.